Welcome to this KCB podcast for the Chartered Governance Institute students entitled Starting Your CGI Studies. The podcast is designed for students who may be embarking on CGI studies for the first time, but it may also be useful for students who are already on their CGI examination journey. My name is Neil McWilliams, and I'm the CGI Programme Leader at KCB and leading tuition provider for the CGI examinations. I've been lecturing CGI modules for many years, having worked in the CGI education department in the early part of my career. And during the podcast, I'm going to try and answer a number of questions that at KCB we regularly receive as students embark upon their studies. Of course, these are our answers to the questions based on our experience of supporting thousands of students in their studies. Others, including the CGI, may have different answers. But whether you agree or disagree with our answers, we hope that the podcast will help you in your thought process about how you will prepare for your forthcoming examinations. So let's start our questions. The first, which we're often asked, is which order should I sit the examinations? So our answer to this is that if you've not received any exemptions, then you will need to start at the beginning. So you'll need to complete the modules contained in part 1 before progressing to part 2. And in terms of those part 1 modules, which are corporate governance, company compliance and administration, interpreting financial and accounting information, and corporate law. Well, these can be sat in any order. But I always suggest that you start with the module that you feel most comfortable with. So maybe your job involves some of the syllabus areas, or maybe it's a subject you've previously studied. It's also worth considering the examination pass rates. The pass rates in the June 23 examination for the first 3 modules that I mentioned range from 44% to 49%. However, for corporate law, the pass rate is higher, and in June 23 was 72%. So just over a quarter of students failed the corporate law exam, rather than half of all students failed the other Part 1 examinations. Now, just at this point, I'd say please don't panic about those low pass rates. I'm going to be discussing those later in the podcast. I think it's also worth mentioning that the CGI have examination semesters. The examinations are held in June and November each year, and the study semesters for these exams commence in February and September each year. So the situation arising is that in the autumn term, there are approximately 12 weeks for preparing for your examinations, whereas in the spring term, the time is longer, with around 16 weeks. Therefore, when selecting the order in which you choose to undertake examinations, you should bear this in mind and maybe take the subjects that you will find harder in the longer semester. This leads me to my next question, which is, should I take 2 modules at the same time? This question is a bit more challenging to answer, but if I start with the recommendation of the CGI, who suggest 200 hours of study per module. Therefore, for 2 modules, this will be 400 hours, which is a massive commitment. And just to give it some perspective, in the short autumn semester, this would represent 33 hours per week, and in the longer spring semester, 25 hours. My belief, however, is if you are focused in your studies, then the study time can be reduced to around 150 hours, so 300 hours for both examinations. What do I mean by focused study? Well, this involves undertaking formal study support from one of the CGI registered tuition providers like ourselves, KCB. With their experience of CGI exams, they're able to really help focus their student studies on what is important. Other factors that will also reduce the required study time includes whether you've already sat a CGI exam. Also, whether you've studied the subject area before, but definitely consider that CGI exams may take a different format to those that you've previously undertaken. You should also consider the dates for the examination and whether your two examinations are being held on the same day. This information is available on the CGI website. Finally, before you decide whether you take two exams in the same sitting, buy the study text and go through the content. I mentioned earlier about the CGI pass rates. So this question is, why are the pass rates for the CGI examinations in Part 1 so low? In my opinion, there are a number of reasons for this. Firstly, these are the pass rates for all students across the world. So, in some parts of the world, English may not always be the student's first language. However, in my experience, the pass rate is more likely concerned with two things. Firstly, understanding what the examiner is looking for in the examination, and secondly, the study support available to students. In terms of what the examiner is looking for, well, the examiner is looking for a good knowledge and understanding across the syllabus, and then the application of the knowledge to the examination questions and the scenarios. The answers must be at the right level using a good examination technique. Our experience is that students are quite good in building their knowledge, but they often fall down in its application to the examination. Please look out for a forthcoming KCB podcast on this important topic. The second issue that I mentioned is the tuition support available to students. Quite often, students attempt sitting the exam by just studying the study text, and whilst the study text is undoubtedly a good source for the knowledge required, as we previously suggested, students fall down on the application of this knowledge to the examination. So as such, the examination pass marks are higher for students who undertake support from one of the CGI registered tuition providers. At KCB, these pass rates are considerably higher for the simple reason that KCB is dedicated only to supporting students pass their CGI exams. That's the only set of exams that we prepare students for. And we understand the other commitments that students will have, such as work and family. So it's important we ensure the best use of our students' time by making all of our studies focus towards what's important in passing the examinations. Now, we appreciate that historically, affordable tuition has not always been available for CGI students in some countries across the globe. And for those students, I really urge them to consider the range of flexible programs offered by KCB. Because as a charity concerned with supporting the professionalism of corporate governance globally, for any territory where the CGI provides reduced rates, so does KCB. And we hope that this ensures that all students irrespective of their location, are able to access our online programs at affordable prices. The next question that we often receive is, what recommendation do we have on how to approach CGI studies? We discussed earlier about what the examiners are looking for. So any approach to study needs to address this in both building knowledge and practicing examination questions. So for this, KCB has devised what we call our 40-20-40 study philosophy, whereby 40% of study effort is dedicated to building knowledge, 20% of effort is dedicated to exploring the knowledge to understand how it relates to other parts of the syllabus and how it can arise in the examination. And finally, 40% of effort is spent practicing examination questions. And this approach ensures that not only the students acquire the knowledge for the examination, but they're able to apply it to the questions and scenarios that arise. I earlier mentioned that CGI recommends 200 hours per module, with the caveat of how this can be reduced. One of my fellow lecturers at KCB recently told me how he explains it to his new students. The study text for his module is around 300 pages long, and at the time of his first lecture in the autumn semester, as we've already mentioned, there's about 12 weeks, which is 84 days until the examination. This equates to reading 4 pages per day and 6 pages per day if you take weekends off. That's to read the whole manual. But given our point that building knowledge should only be about 40% of effort, the real importance is not to delay the start of your studies. So you're working on building your knowledge in the first 6 weeks before focusing on applying the knowledge through exam practice in the later weeks. And the exam practice helps you reaffirm the knowledge and demonstrates where you still have gaps. I always think that the biggest issue for students that does relate to the pass mark is how students leave it too long and try to cram too much knowledge in the final weeks of their study. So leading on from this, the final question that we most often receive is, what resources are available to support me in my CGI studies? Firstly, I think there's a lot of available learning resources, and much of it is available for free. Crucially, the key learning resource is the latest version of the dedicated module study text available from the CGI. And this covers all the learning required for the examination. But throughout this podcast, we've reiterated the importance of examination practice. Well, the CGI provides the best support possible for this. On their website, within the My CG area, they not only provide all recent past examination papers, but they also provide a marking scheme for each paper. And to explain, marking schemes are used by the examiners in allocating marks to your answers. The importance of both the past examination papers and the marking schemes is that they enable students to attempt past exam questions, and they can then mark their own questions by checking whether they've included the points within the marking scheme. There's also other resources on the CGI website, including webinars, and 2 webinars that I produced for the CGI are entitled How to Prepare for CGI Examinations and also How to Tackle CGI Examinations. Both are worth a watch. For corporate governance modules, I've also delivered some free revision lectures for the CGI. And for those undertaking this modules, these are definitely worth a watch, and details are available from the CGI. Finally, as I have mentioned, don't underestimate the value of a good tuition provider to help you in your preparation. Please check out our range of online programs on our website, which is kcbglobal.net. I wish you well in your studies and hope you found this podcast useful. Please follow us on LinkedIn, where we'll be providing details of further podcasts over the coming weeks, covering other important topics to help you with your studies. Thank you.